Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be talking about the zodiac sign Gemini and crimes, and yes, it does apply and pertain to the sun, moon, and ascendant. Well, anyway, as far as Gemini crimes go, when I'm talking about Gemini crimes, I'm talking about crimes that I feel they have a very strong propensity to commit. And Gemini, as far as crimes go, they, I believe, can often be connected or associated with lying and prevarication. It could be giving false testimony. It could be defamation of character. It could be slanderous lies. The thing about Gemini, too, when I see crimes associated with them, keep in mind Gemini is a dual sign. It may be the most dual of the signs. They are symbolized by the twins. And then there could be crimes that are really that may be close to duality in terms of what they're about, like identity theft, trying to be someone else. I think a lot of this has to do with Gemini. It's really could be vicarious, and I think a lot of it sometimes is they kind of if they're committing a crime, say it's identity theft or they're impersonating somebody, they're kind of I think some of them may actually enjoy doing this because they're actually living another person's life, and that's kind of what Gemini, being the dual sign that they are and the sign of the twins, there could actually be some enjoyment in this to some degree in being another person. I think with Gemini more so than the other zodiac signs. Now, the crimes could be connected with being an imposter, impersonating somebody, also forgery, and Gemini's often is if the real negative manifestation of Gemini, if they become a criminal, their crimes can also be often associated with theft. It could be burglary, it could anything where it may involve stealing and being and what a thief does basically. So also that Gemini's can be the quintessential con man or con woman. They could be very good at conning others too. And you see a lot of Geminis that resort to criminal activity may resort to being con men or con women. And going back to the prevarication thing about Gemini, also perjury could be another thing that Gemini may commit more so than the other zodiac signs, I believe, on average. So, uh, in talking about crimes that are associated with Gemini and the dual qualities, well, what I thought was interesting, and perhaps a good example of this, is many of you may have heard of the infamous or notorious weepy voiced killer. And what he had likely was a Gemini moon. I don't know. I know his sun was in Virgo. I don't know his ascendant because I don't know the time of the birth, but his moon was either late Taurus or it was in Gemini. And if his time of birth was around 1:15 a.m. or later, the moon would be in Gemini. I lean more toward this because what's interesting about that weepy voiced killer, what would happen is, okay, what he was about, he showed a very scrupulous facade to others in his daily life or whatever, whether it was his job or what have you, and there was no reason to suspect that he had this other nefarious side. But what happened was he turned out to be somebody that would be a killer. And I mean, it was really it makes me think that his moon was very likely in Gemini, and especially if it was afflicted, and then you could really bring out some negative characteristics of that sign, and in this case some very adverse ones, and sometimes an actual dual quality. Perhaps this kind of was the reason why he may have showed a dual-natured quality, being one person and in one light in one area or aspect of his life. Then when then another moment he would just be this killer and become this very nefarious person. Now, also, Gemini crimes could be very clever and ingenious. Geminis could be very shrewd, and their crimes can they could use this shrewdness toward their crimes as well. I had a Gemini Ascendant friend one time was talking about, uh, doing some kind of, I guess you could say, a scam, something about a soda redemption machine scam. I'm not going to get into the gory details, of course, because I'm not going to. When I say soda redemption machine scam, of course, I'm talking about those machines when you put like the sodas in them and you get empty soda cans in them and you get some money for putting them in them. But he had some kind of scam connected with that. That his idea. I'm sure he never followed through on it. But the point I'm making is Geminis can often formulate some very shrewd plans. Gemini, in terms as far as a criminal plan, as far as anything illegal goes, they can come up with pretty ingenious ideas, and though that's the way Gemini can operate. Gemini is often about outmaneuvering and outsmarting others. It's about Geminis may formulate plans to outmaneuver a system. And if Gemini is a criminal and is on the run, I would say them, of all the signs, are the ones that can elude capture probably the best, because Geminis often tend to be one step ahead of people, and they would be I would see Geminis being very difficult to apprehend, a Gemini Sun, Moon, or Ascendant. Now, another thing too, I want to go back to the duality of the sign Gemini, and a good, interesting example is Kenneth Bianchi, who was one of the Hillside Stranglers. And what's funny with him is that he had actually pretended to have a multiple personality disorder, and he has his sun in Gemini. He later admitted that he was faking it in order, I guess, in order to try to extricate himself from possible jail time. And another thing he did too is, and this goes back to what I was saying about Gemini crimes can often be connected with some kind of impersonation. And in this case, Kenneth Bianchi had apparently, he pretended to be a psychologist. He had apparently purchased some fake psychology degree, and he was trying to he was pretending he was a psychologist, and I believe he set up his own business for a little bit. Geminis can often be involved in fraudulent schemes and malicious, I would say malicious mischief. Gemini can be very mischievous, and if you get a Gemini angry and they resort to some life of crime, or you make them angry at you and they're going to commit a crime against you, it could be something very mischievous, and it could be some kind of defacement or something connected with vandalism. If you see then, I mean, one minute you can be, everything could seem all right, then you go outside, your next morning your car will be bouncing up and down, and you don't understand what the heck happened. And I'm not saying Gemini obviously won't be the cause every single time, but I'm just saying as an example, that's something that Gemini would like to do, because what Gemini will do often in their crimes, especially if they're getting revenge on somebody, they want to really often get that rise out of them and be like, really, haha, I got you, and do something that they know is going to really irritate that person. Now, I think as far as being vengeful and vindictive, I think Scorpio probably takes the cake on average, but sometimes Gemini can have this as well. Keep in mind that in a solar or natal chart, the zodiac sign Scorpio can often fall on Gemini's 6th house of daily routine, so they can incorporate this daily, really, those Scorpio-like qualities in terms of that vengeance, and really Gemini is often that can really, even though Gemini is generally very friendly, very amiable, and good disposition, they could really get you back pretty good sometimes, because I've had experience with it with some people that have had Gemini prominent in their chart, and I understand. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Gemini crimes, and stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be talking about what I believe, in my opinion, are the worst astrological aspects. 2 things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel, and secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.